I love Monolith Soft. They've been my favorite game developer for over 15 years now, thanks to their deep battle mechanics, distinct world and dungeon designs, as well as their ability to tie story and gameplay mechanics together in thoughtful ways. There's almost always something for me to love about nearly every game they put out, but no love is perfect. Unfortunately, over the last 5 or so years, I found myself in an odd position compared to other fans of Monolith Soft games. I desperately want the Xeno franchise to end. It's an unrealistic ask. This isn't the late 90s or early 2000s when the franchise was constantly struggling to maintain a player base and meet the demands of the game's publishers. Today, each new release sells well over 1 million units, while further cultivating a die-hard fanbase invested in the world Monolith Soft is building, or maybe more appropriately for Xeno, a universe. I'm going to be talking about higher level Xeno universe traits, so just as a heads up, I do need to lightly touch on some spoilers in this video. The Xeno franchise is known for its grand scale, with both Xenogears in the 90s and Xenosaga in the early 2000s laying out extensive narratives that spread well beyond one single game. Playing these titles, you can feel the intense ambition behind them that ultimately crumbles upon themselves, leaving behind massive husks of universes unexplored. This is a big part of why the franchise gained the image of having incomprehensible narratives that need supplemental books, religious texts, data entries, and spin-offs to truly understand. Though today, you'd probably just read all of that on a wiki. In my eyes, modern Xeno fans have adopted this image of the franchise being some complicated network of universe-scale events, but it's far from true anymore. Monolith Soft seemingly takes a more sustainable approach with Xenoblade, crafting one world at a time, then using key moments to slowly build a loosely connected universe. Whether that approach is good or bad depends on whom you're asking. Many veterans, and maybe at this point retired Xeno fans, will find Xenoblade's scale too small to match the upfront promise the Xenogears and Saga universes had. Meanwhile, I think more modern fans enjoy the drip feed of details, giving them space to theory craft each step of the way as Monolith Soft slowly rolls out a grander vision to them. I, however, want nothing to do with either of these approaches. If you're not familiar with Monolith Soft, you may mistakenly think all they've ever done are Xeno games. No, I'm not talking about their support work on titles like Zelda, Splatoon, or Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus, a title they barely touched. They previously worked on quite a few different RPGs, though it's been nearly a decade since the last. The Baten Kaitos series they developed with Tri-Crescendo, while still relatively niche, is their most notable secondary franchise. They also have done a lot of work on licensed games for Bandai Namco, with the Endless Frontier spin-offs of the Super Robot Tyson franchise, as well as various crossover RPGs featuring characters from Namco, Capcom, and Sega. They even did a Dragon Ball Z game. How much these titles align their values with the Xeno franchise varies per game, but each has its own identity and strength. So someone who started with one of these other games may want something out of Monolith Soft that varies significantly from those who start with the Xeno franchise. So which RPG was my first and golden standard of what Monolith Soft can be? None of them. It was Disaster Day of Crisis. This is a 2008 Nintendo Wii action, adventure, survival, on-rail shooter thing. It's a weird game. Natural disasters are occurring back to back to back. Raymond Bryce, a retired rescue worker, has to not only survive, but also save as many people as possible, despite struggling with the trauma of losing his best friend Steve on his last operation. At the same time, he must combat a group of ex-Marine special forces that are out for revenge after being left for dead by the US military. It's also built entirely around making the most of the Wii Remote's capabilities. Obviously, this is a very different game than what Monolith Soft is known for. However, if you like their unhinged villains like Mumkar and Dirk in the Xenoblade franchise, Disaster Day of Crisis has got you.
This is the detonator. With a simple push of the button, boom! If you shoot me, boom! We'll be blown sky high! So come on, pal! Shoot me!
Major Evans is my favorite Monolith Soft villain. He's just a dude horny for you to shoot at him while he's in a hurricane.
Earthquakes, tsunamis, eruptions, floods, and now a hurricane? And all this was just your idea of a good time? Ah, yeah!
and he wants you to do that forever.
I just wanted the fun to last. I don't want it to end yet.
It's the endless now, Ray!
But from a story perspective, despite touching on themes like PTSD, the heartlessness of military geopolitics, and wrongly blaming oneself for the death of others, it handles it all in a very dumb B-movie way, which is okay. I love just how straightforward Disaster Day of Crisis is. As much as I would love to argue my point against the Xeno series with Disaster Day of Crisis as my basis, unfortunately, I don't think I'm at the point in my life where I could effectively do that. We're not asking what it means to be human here. There are no universe-wide supercomputers or scientists playing with the power of God, just Major Evans and his hurricane bullet fetish religion.
Because every disaster is like a gift from God!
Mainly, I wanted to let you know the extreme entry point at which I came to love this developer. But there is a game by Monolith Soft that I think does a good job of representing the benefits of a Disaster Day of Crisis-like simplicity in a very Xeno-like story. I've always been surprised how rare it is that Soma Bringer comes up in the conversation around Xeno, since in a lot of ways, it is essentially a Xeno game without the name, similar to how Xenoblade Chronicles started out as its own unique thing as Monado, Beginning of the World. Soma Bringer was a part of the late 2000s local wireless multiplayer boom in Japan that included games like Monster Hunter and Dragon Quest IX. Maybe partly for that reason, along with the lack of online play, it was never released in any other region. But a group unofficially translated it into English only about a year after release, so thanks to everyone on this list, otherwise this video probably wouldn't exist. Soma Bringer is an action RPG in the style of an old-school Diablo game with an isometric viewpoint and stiff attack animations that leave little room for evasive maneuvers. It also has maze-like dungeon design and a loot-driven system built with replayability in mind. At face value, it feels very different from what you'd expect from Monolith Soft. But underneath these layers, the Xeno series' key combat gimmick is here, the break system. As with their other games, this mechanic shifts the enemy into a vulnerable state for additional damage and can be exploited to launch them into the air, disabling their ability to act. But this is the first time they implemented it into an action RPG. It's a bit crude in its execution, as there are no specific skills to initiate the break state. The window to act on this mechanic to deal damage is also incredibly small. You can extend it, but unlike other Xeno games where hitting an enemy is almost entirely dependent on an accuracy stat, Soma Bringer asks the players to make physical contact with their foe with each attack. It's up to the player to maintain a juggle with precise strikes so the enemy will stay in a launched state. I love Soma Bringer, but not for any gameplay reasons. Monolith Soft's combat systems are special to me. Getting one that hits all the right notes is a very difficult thing, something I've talked a bit more in depth about in my Xenoblade Chronicles 3 video. Soma Bringer's execution is just not great, but I'll give it participation points for trying. What makes me love Soma Bringer instead is its story. As a multiplayer title, it has some unique challenges that I think work in its favor. Any one of the main party members can be used as your player character. However, a young man named Welt acts as the player's eyes here. It's his first mission as a new recruit in a brigade that makes up all the other playable characters. The cast is incredibly large from the start, often limiting each character's screen time with crowded scenes as it tries to tell all their stories bit by bit. Despite the number of characters, in most other aspects, Soma Bringer is incredibly conservative. It forgoes any cinematic quality of the typical Xeno game, with cutscenes that largely play out with character portraits portraying emotion and small character models in the background conveying movement. To top it all off, the length and number of cutscenes feel restricted here, which may not be surprising given the title is built as a multiplayer loot game where anyone can join at any point. What it doesn't compromise on, though, is being a Xeno title thematically through and through. The party stumbles across a mysterious girl with amnesia named Idea, the world is struggling with the sudden appearance of dangerous monsters known as visitors, while various organizations and mysterious groups clash over powerful artifacts. All this connects back to an ancient tower equipped with a massive ring that spins on the edge of space, an image Xeno fans will be all too familiar with. If you've played a Xeno game, it asks all the questions you'd expect. What makes someone human? How those with shared intentions end up on conflicting paths? Who you're willing to turn on to protect another? And so on. pretty standard RPG stuff, but with the franchise's distinct flair, including its ultimate message being about all the ways humans sabotage themselves through fear. Rarely do Xeno games deviate from what they ask, simply they change how they answer. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What sets Soma Bringer apart is the way it answers these questions. With a restricted presentation and a need to be timely to keep gameplay sessions moving, it's very concise and straightforward. That does mean these characters are some of Monolith Soft's most underexplored. It often handles key story elements in a few back-to-back cutscenes before fairly quickly reaching a conclusion. Some might find that disappointing, but I found it oddly refreshing compared to a typical RPG, where sometimes the simplest questions get mulled on for dozens of hours. It's free of fluff, saving the specifics for only when they truly matter. In most cases for Soma Bringer, that's helping Idea find her purpose. Idea is maybe one of my favorite Monolith Soft characters, not because she has any particularly unique backstory, abilities, character design, or unique relationships. I think it's because of how she holds herself as she learns about who she is and what she's meant to do. Despite the burden of these tasks, she doesn't push herself away from the relationships she formed with the group. There are times when she has to hide truths about who she is, but it feels like she makes those decisions in complete confidence that the relationship she has with others will remain intact, while still having empathy for how they'll feel once they do learn about how the journey impacts her. That's not to say she never doubts herself and what she's doing, but most of her struggles come from a lack of knowledge, not determination. The narrow focus of these scenes accentuates these aspects of her demeanor. Instead of spending a ton of time delving into her mind of how to react or what to do, it instead shows her conviction through her words and actions. One thing that I think is important to you understanding the argument of this video is how I view the ending of Soma Bringer, since it does something I think Xenoblade Chronicles could never do. So I need to talk about it, but I assume most of you have never played Soma Bringer. I think you may miss my point not hearing about it, but I'll leave it up to you to make your own decision about skipping this section using the table of contents. One frustration I have with a lot of games is a lack of commitment to key scenes, especially in how they represent sacrifice. Frequently, they will turn their back on the decisions they make, which cheapens these moments. I think Xenoblade has also fallen into this trap many times. But as a plus, for the games that are willing to make these sacrifices real, it makes them feel even more potent. No one dies at the end of Soma Bringer, but the ultimate fate of Idea is to essentially be banished from the planet, as her presence, combined with the fear humans have for one another, is what will bring about the world's end. Idea accepts that, and unsurprisingly, initially no one else does. But when that last encounter is over, it's clear Idea will never return. Welt, who is arguably her love interest, or at least her closest friend, more or less lies to himself that Idea will one day return, even after she's pretty clear that can never happen. I think in the end, Welt knows that as well. But I like his inability to accept that reality in front of him. Instead, he turns to an unattainable hope of creating a world free of human fear so she can return. A good chunk of the comments I read online were unhappy with this conclusion. A fairy tale ending is always tempting, and I think Xeno storytelling is often at its best when avoiding them. But it's a conclusion I like, since deceiving oneself is a common way humans cover their pain. Instead of accepting the death of another, we hold the belief that the person will watch over us from the heavens until we can someday meet again. Reality says otherwise. In fiction, spiritual and supernatural connections give these characters one last, or sometimes multiple, chances to reunite with someone, even if only for a moment. If Soma Bringer were a part of the larger Xeno universe, I feel like the expectation is that an ending like this would have to be answered in some way, that Idea would eventually see the world Welt aimed to create, or at least give him a moment of comfort through a connection with her. I like that Welt will never be able to get either of these. In some ways, I feel like how I look at Soma Bringer is similar to how some Xenogears and Saga fans see the modern franchise. They can't look beyond their universe's immense potential and scale, leaving them separated from what Xeno is today. What makes Soma Bringer special to me is similar, but the opposite. Just how small it will always be. What happens to Welt after Soma Bringer's ending doesn't matter. What's important is how that experience sets him off for the rest of his life with a new purpose, even if realistically, he'll never achieve it. Soma Bringer today is a footnote in Monolith Soft's history and will likely never return as a meaningful franchise, and that gives me comfort. Back in 2011, with the Xenosaga franchise behind me, I think I felt a very similar feeling with the original Xenoblade Chronicles. It was a fantastic standalone world that was formed after years of overly ambitious universe planning. But that feeling has slowly eroded, as Monolith Soft has to find new ways to connect it to the worlds they built today. It's hard for me to look at the original Xenoblade Chronicles in that light anymore. I also think it hurts the new stories they tell. Each future Xenoblade Chronicles tells a great story on its own, but it often feels like it gets bogged down in having to force connections to other games in ways that don't necessarily improve the narrative. It takes away a lot of the fun of discovering the mysteries of the world by applying story points we already know, but fleshing out one new small detail that contextualizes the event from another game. I'm not saying Xenoblade will never be able to present a meaningful multi-world narrative, but the sacrifices they've made today, anchoring each world in environments, characters, and story details of the past, make each new title feel less surprising, and I also think less whole. Soma Bringer is an old DS game no one cares about. At least today, it's a safe place free from that. In saying all that, I am a bit envious of Xenoblade fans because I think there's a lot of value for them in the expansion of the Xeno universe. While I'll grumble over the inevitable new Xeno game announcement, they'll get to share their excitement with the community as they pore over each new detail. Something that was especially true with Xenoblade Chronicles 3's DLC, Future Redeemed, which brings back aged-up versions of Shulk and Rex to play new roles as fathers and mentors. These moments are great ways to communicate and connect to one another within a community. It's easy to focus on the negative sides of any fan base, but I also think moments like these are some of the most positive interactions you can have with games as you celebrate the characters and worlds you love together. I love them too, but I also never want to see them again. I feel like the most impactful moments are always at risk of being upended for some quick fan service down the line. And when you love things that either don't evolve or you are constantly on the move looking for the next new thing, it can be difficult to maintain connections with people or find anyone to share your excitement with. So things like the latest Xenoblade Chronicles post-credits teaser is a vague, pointless endeavor for someone like me, but it's something Xeno fans can talk and bond over for months or maybe years to come, sharing their theories, excitement, and ultimately their love for Xenoblade. And what I can say is I look forward to the day when everyone, old Xeno fan or new Xeno fan, can all come together and cry when they realize this is the meteorite from the end of Disaster Day of Crisis. Raymond's back, and it's price time, baby! Thanks for watching, and also thanks to the people who support me on Ko-fi, including Fireweed, Jillian, Demodori, Megamint, Zero, and Vink. I appreciate it. Also, if you haven't checked it out, I made a video about HaKox, only the best Xeno game, so check that out if you haven't.